Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time to take part in our Rio Salado College's third annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration. Our theme for this year is Realizing the Dream. Today is a special tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the legacy of the Civil Rights Movement, and for all of the forces that have helped to lead the quest for equity and justice for all. Our program today stands as an amazing symbol to show that we, Rio Salado College, are determined to continue to champion this legacy and to move forward Dr. King's effort. Hello again, everyone. My name is Dr. Floyd Harden III, and I have the pleasure of serving as Rio Salado College's Executive Officer of Equity and College Relations. Today, I get to welcome you all to our presentation and provide you with a brief about today's event. Today's event is being presented by Rio Salado College's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. The role of this special advisory body is to work across the college to help foster a culture that values and honors everyone's unique qualities with dignity and respect. Our program today is a combination of both live and pre-recorded presentations. The program today will begin with reflections from our president, Interim President Kate Smith, and employees about the meaning of civil rights, equity, social justice, and how that contributes to an environment of belonging and inclusivity. That will be followed by a keynote address by the Honorable U.S. Representative for Arizona's 9th Congressional District, Mr. Greg Stanton. Then we will close with a pledge of action and our very special Rio Salado College tradition of reciting Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Please note that today we are recording this celebration to share with the public at a later time. As you may realize, your microphone is muted. All guest microphones will be muted throughout the program today. Additionally, we have disabled the chat feature for today's presentation. If you have any pressing questions or comments that need immediate attention, we ask you to please use your reaction function to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, one of our moderators will address you specifically and privately as quickly as possible. Again, we want to thank you for your patience and for your participation in today's event. As we come together, I want to acknowledge that these are unique times, that sometimes this is not normal, and that there is a tremendous sense of loss that we may be experiencing as a global community. There may be a communal sense of grief that we are all carrying. But amidst all that is going on and all that we are dealing with, today we get to come together. Today, I want to remind us that as a collective, there is more that bonds us than that divides us. There's more that we share than do not, and more of the human condition that unites us than that which separates us. And so today we will explore these elements. At this time, I'd like to thank our attendees for celebrating with us, our community members, our university transfer partners, and our elected officials, specifically our governing board member, Ms. Kathleen Wynn, and our President Advisory Council members, Mr. Charles Flanagan, Chief U.S. Probation Officer of the District of Arizona, Ms. Dana Kennedy, State Director for AARP, Ms. Cheryl Hart, Deputy Associate Superintendent for the Arizona Department of Education, and Ms. Anique Petit, Senior Director for Trusted Learning and Partnerships. I'd like to thank our DEIB Council, our IA team, and thanks to our forever champion and our very special cheerleader, our Interim President, Ms. Kate Smith. At this time, I'd like to welcome Rio Salado College's Interim President, Kate Smith, who would also like to share some remarks as we begin today's program. President Smith?
Thank you so much, Dr. Harden, for your opening remarks. Thank you to every guest who is joining us today within our Rio community and our Rio advocates. Thank you to our esteemed guests, as Dr. Floyd already spoke your names, and we recognize you and thank you for joining us. Our Martin Luther King Jr. celebration is a flagship event for Rio Salado College, and we are honored to be able to come together as we champion our work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I would be remiss if I didn't give an extra shout out to our council, our DEIB council. Please just join me clapping. We have a large council who's done so much amazing work as a college and moving us forward as we remain focused and we remain committed to justice, to equity, to civil dialogue, civil engagement, and inclusion and belonging for all. And as we champion this work for our college community, for our students, and for our larger communities around us nationally and globally. So thank you all for being here today. It is my honor and my privilege to be here with all of you. I hand it back to you, Dr. Harden.
Thank you, President Smith. At this time, we will go ahead and begin our program with the video that we're so excited about to show the reflections of our college community. Hello, Rio friends and family, and thank you for joining us today. The purpose of today's occasion is to remember, to celebrate, and to plan. Today, we come together as one to remember the past, to celebrate the present, and to plan for the future. As we honor the significance of this event and the theme for this year, Realizing the Dream, we start our remembrance today at historic Eastlake Park. As we stand in historic Eastlake Park today, I am in awe of the role that this special place has played in our collective history. This pillar of the greater Phoenix community has been both birthplace and home, site and symbol to many an endeavor whose quest was justice and equity for all. As I think of the past struggles of so many, I'm reminded of Dr. King's adage, we must have the strength to love. As I stand before you, I stand here with an acute understanding of both pain and conflict. We are in the confluence of an economic downturn. The attention to our differences has intensified. And we have healthcare challenges that must have solutions. Amidst all of this, I am reminded that we must still find the strength to love. It is the strength to love that allows us to examine a history peppered with injustice and still find hope. It is the strength to love that allows us to experience crippling traumas and still rise. It is the strength to love that allows us to exercise dignified patience in the face of demeaning inequity. And it is the strength to love that has brought us here today as one. A day where we move in Dr. King's legacy to shape a world where generations from now, all children can continue to name themselves anything they choose. And it is the strength to love that has allowed all of us at Rio Salado to gather as one today. To celebrate our accomplishments as we move our institution into a space where we are realizing the dream and making Rio Salado College a space for all people. And so, colleagues, Rio Salado family, it is with a great heart that I thank you for joining us today on our journey of justice. And now, it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce one of my dearest colleagues and this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Chairperson, Ms. Sherry Moore Williams.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Rio Salado College's third annual Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration event. I am Sherry Moore Williams. You might wonder why some of us are filming this segment at Eastlake Park in Phoenix, Arizona. Eastlake Park was chosen because of the historical significance. In 1964, when Dr. King visited Phoenix, he delivered his speech at a formal church in the Eastlake Park area. Historically, the site played host to celebrations, lectures, and civil rights events, including when Booker T. Washington spoke in 1911 at an Emancipation Jubilee. Arizona was the last state in the United States to officially recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a national holiday. In November 1992, voters passed a Martin Luther King/Civil Rights Day holiday. The African American community and many others in the Phoenix metropolitan area had been celebrating Dr. King on or around his birthday annually in January at Eastlake Park. However, January 1993 was the first time the Arizona community members were able to join the rest of the country in recognizing and honoring Dr. King on the national holiday. Eastlake Park continues to be an epicenter where people gather and march on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. It is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce our interim president, Kate Smith. With nearly 30 years of experience in education, President Smith is a highly regarded and enthusiastic leader who advocates for student success on all levels. She understands the barriers that non-traditional students face and is dedicated to making education affordable, accessible, and equitable. Previously, President Smith has worked in school districts located in impoverished communities, where her focus included creating diverse and equitable programs with an emphasis on closing the gaps that promote disparities in education. She is a champion of social justice issues, and she continues to endorse the implementation of programs at the college level that have social justice features embedded within the curriculum. During her tenure at Rio Salado College, she is credited with the creation of the Trust and Value Committee, and she is both an enthusiastic participant on and a supporter of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Council. In May of 2020, the Aspen Institute College Excellence Programs selected President Smith for the 2020-2021 class of the Aspen Rising President's Fellowship, a highly selective leadership program preparing the next generation of community college presidents to transform institutions to achieve higher and more equitable levels of student success. She continues to be passionate about learning, giving back, mathematics, and supporting friends and family. Once again, it is a pleasure for me to introduce you to Rio Salado College's interim president, Kate Smith.
Good afternoon and welcome, Rio Salado College family, friends, and guests. Today, we gather to recognize and celebrate the birth and life of an iconic civil rights activist, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who chose to live his life in relentless and heroic pursuit of truth and justice. In recognition of Dr. King's legacy, we are bringing you this celebration from Eastlake Park, a park that for much of its existence has served as a focal point of African American history. For starters, the park has been home to the annual Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebration, until the celebration outgrew the capacity of the park. It has been home to many civil rights rallies, visits from civil rights leaders, and the starting point of civil rights marches to the Capitol. Additionally, it has also been home to the annual Juneteenth celebration and the Phoenix Arts Commission Civil Rights Memorial. Rio Salado College was founded on the premise of access, inclusion, and a relentless belief in social equity. Founded in 1978 as the College Without Walls, Rio began with a mission to go beyond traditional means to provide education, the pathway to social and economic mobility, to those who had previously been barred from access to education. Today, we stand on that legacy and remain laser-focused on providing access to underserved and oft-marginalized communities and growing an inclusive culture committed to equity and social justice. So with the utmost respect for those that have long carried the heavy mantle of fighting for justice and equality, we are honored to celebrate Dr. King's legacy, to honor the work and lives of so many unsung civil rights activists, and to heed the call to continue to stand for equity and justice for all. So our theme, realizing the dream. To me, realizing the dream is the day when it is commonplace for a woman of color to be the vice president-elect of our country, not a first. When our zip code that we are born into no longer defines the opportunities we will have in this country. And when we are no longer divided. It is when we recognize every human being for who they are, the gifts, the talents, and the potential that they embody. And it is when we embrace difference of thought, difference of beliefs, difference of ways of being. When we embrace differences as the fabrics woven together to make a beautiful whole. And with that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce my esteemed colleague, Mr. Tafari Osiandi. Tafari.
Greetings. As we continue to face a global pandemic, social unrest domestically, in our commemoration of Dr. King's life and legacy, it's important for us to remember Dr. King's relentless commitment to freedom and justice. Dr. King, ever a proponent of the children of the movement, in 1967, had the opportunity to address the students at Barrett Junior High in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In Dr. King's speech, Dr. King asked the students, "What is in your life blueprint?" And he outlined to the student 3 components. 1, Dr. King encouraged the students to have a deep belief in their dignity, worth, and somebodyness. 2, Dr. King asked the student to have a relentless determination to achieve excellence in all their endeavors in life. And then 3, Dr. King asked the students to adhere to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. One such children of the movement is our very own Ernestine Harrison, Associate Dean. Ernie has been a staple within the Rio Salado community for years and has served the Rio community as a servant leader and has had the opportunity to ultimately mentor and shape the fabric of Rio, being current faculty as well as executive leaders. And so to you, Ernie, we appreciate you. We understand that you're moving towards retirement. And so before that reason, we want to thank you for all the work that you've done, and you will ever be a part of the Rio Salado community. In the words of the African-American proverb, every shut eye ain't sleep, every goodbye ain't gone. And we know that you will always be a part of the Rio community, Ernie. So thank you.
Thanks, Tafari. Hi, my name is Ernestine Harrison, and I have been working with Rio Salado College for 21 years. I began as a part-time employee. I knew that Rio was known for its innovation, classes without walls all over the valley, and I thought that it would be a good fit for me. I was encouraged to try new ideas. There was no failure, just an opportunity to improve the process. I was blessed to be in the position to start what we now know as the Instructional Help Desk, which was formerly known as FAST, Faculty Support Team. Worked with a diverse staff and saw each of them grow. I was able to bring the skills from my previous career to utilize them in this position. I was hired full-time and was promoted to supervisor, then associate dean. If it had not been for God being on my side and the work Dr. Martin Luther King and others were doing, it would not have been so. I am realizing the dream. A legacy is what you contribute in your life at home, work, and the community. Dr. King is a legacy that we are discussing today. A legacy is your story, which is usually foundational by faith, how you demonstrate in your decisions, and what values you lived, because the values you lived are important to you. Realizing the dream, to me, is to live a life where my legacy of love, caring, empathy, and sharing will be remembered. I see Rio having the legacy that I want to be a part of. Our 4 practices of engagement. Practice makes perfect. When we talk about Martin Luther King, why does justice matter? Well, Dr. Martin Luther King was a minister. And biblically, Justice is referenced as a means to make right. Actions speak louder than words. Dr. King was full of actions. I've personified Dr. King's quote, "The time is always right to do right," by thinking about doing something positive for someone, treating people how you want to be treated, taking time out to share and care, become a mentor to someone, take the time to get to know them, listen, share your experiences. It doesn't cost anything for some kind words and taking the time to treat people with respect and dignity. You know, when we adopted the 4 practices of engagement, it reminded me of doing the right thing. Being engaged, being mindful, having resilience, being happy, and having empathy. These all equate to what Dr. King was saying in "The time is always right to do right." Start now, treating people with dignity, respect, and courtesy. I have been able to realize the dream my forefathers couldn't. For one, I was able to work for a major corporation and move through the ranks of management. To be able to go to an educational institution and utilizing the tuition assistance plan that saved me thousands of dollars. I was able to sit in a classroom with other students. My Aunt Nancy, or Randolph Davis, was the first Black student to attend Oklahoma State University and had to sit in the hallway for her classes. They now honor her with a statue, a dorm named after her, scholarships, and a street in her name. I was hired by Rio and had the privilege of starting a department that no other college or institution had. Became an associate dean and had the privilege of supporting many employees that worked in the instructional help desk, to faculty and management positions, supported fellow employees in good and bad times. Before COVID, I had always tried to meet new employees. I wanted everybody to know who I was, and I wanted to know them. They are all my peeps. One thing that I would like for the next generation to do that could help continue to realize the dream is that we have now a diversity team that we did not have 21 years ago. I encourage the next generation to participate. Get involved. Let your voices be heard. We have a leadership team that endorses and believes that it is needed. The activities and outputs are only as good as you. Embrace the change. Be the change. Each one, touch one. Don't wait for someone to do it for you. Do it for yourself. It is difficult right now during COVID to get to know everyone. However, on the website, there is an org chart. Take a look and see who the people are on that org chart and reach out to them. Reach out to someone that you don't normally interact with. Make sure that you know those individuals that you are working with on a daily basis. Remember, the students we serve are working to achieve the dream. Be a part of the experience. You will be surprised how much we have in common with each other, regardless of gender, race, religion, and the level in the organization. We can and we are realizing the dream.
Martin Luther King Day is much more than a holiday to me. It reminds me that Dr. King and so many people alongside him and after him have fought for the civil rights of everyone. Being an American, I don't take these civil rights for granted. In front of thousands of people, Martin Luther King Jr. said the now famous words, "I have a dream." His 1963 speech in Washington, D.C. has become a cherished and significant part of U.S. history. He was a Baptist pastor from Atlanta and became a civil rights leader who spent his life fighting for an end to racial segregation and inequality. His example still serves as a guidepost for our society more than 50 years later. His words still call us on to be better. Justice, equity, and inclusion means treating everyone equally with fairness and respect, despite any differences in race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or background. It's not easy to do because of our differences, but it is something significant to work towards. Maybe we get more caught up in how different we are, but how about we shift the focus on the similarities we share as human beings who want a better world? These pillars of community are so important because of what we witness in everyday events depicting civil injustice and unrest. It does come down to how we treat one another. How peaceful this world would be if we simply be kind to one another. Being an Asian American woman, I am keenly aware of Dr. King's fight for racial equality for all. My parents immigrated from the Philippines for a better life in the United States that includes being free to live the lives they want for themselves and for us as their children. This freedom is a gift given to each and every one of us as United States citizens. My belief and practice of these values have shaped my life, and that I live each day respecting others and understanding our differences. I simply could not operate any other way. It makes my heart sad to see when others are mistreated because of who they are. We need to remember that we each are unique in our own way and to celebrate this diversity because it makes life worthwhile. Each day, I work hard to embody and carry on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to continue to love and respect everyone. I embrace each individual's unique persona and appreciate their contributions to our society. Thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for your commitment and passion. May your legacy continue in our world, countries, cities, streets, policies, conversations, schools, and beyond.
In preparing for this reflection, I pondered two questions. First, I considered, what does Martin Luther King Jr. mean to me? For me, Martin Luther King Jr. has stood out as a great beacon of hope and courage from over the past 100 years, for he is one of the few people during that time who has truly challenged the system and stood up for disenfranchised and underrepresented people in our country. He not only worked for civil rights and voting rights for all people, he also was an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War and sought economic justice for all. He truly is a leader who sought peace and equality for all. The second question I pondered is, how does our theme for today's event, Realizing the Dream, resonate with me? I looked to two of Dr. King's quotes to help me on the journey to realizing his dream of peace and equality for all. First, King states, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I wrestle with this question, for I sometimes get stuck in my comfortable life and wonder, what should I be doing to help others, to contribute to the world? Sometimes I get overwhelmed with the problems in the world, and I'm not sure where to start. Yet I know I need to do more. Maybe I need community and accountability to help me, or maybe I just need more courage. But I wondered, where do I start, and what am I called to do? Now to the second quote of King. He states, human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. I read this quote and I said, wow, that is a challenge. To sacrifice, to struggle, to suffer. But I sense he is right. Progress will not come on its own. Dr. King's efforts came down to service for others and to having the faith and courage to struggle for what is right. Importantly, he also had a community of support along the way. So I realized I am being challenged to not only serve others with faith and courage, but also to build community to make that service possible.
Good afternoon, Rio Salado family. My name is Kevin Miller, and I am honored to be here with you this afternoon and share my thoughts on what Martin Luther King Day means to me. I was born and raised here in Arizona. My mother is white and my father is Filipino. I wanted to share a story with you about the first time that I experienced discrimination and really learned what it was. I was in about the 3rd grade, and a girl from my class had moved onto my street. I was so excited. Her and I were going to play together at school, and now we were going to be able to play together at home. Her and I played together for quite a bit for a few months until one day she said to me, "Kevin, I'm so sorry, I'm not allowed to play with you anymore." I was shocked and confused. So I asked her why. And she said, "Well, your dad is not white, and my parents feel like it might not be safe for us to play together." I was shattered. One, it had never occurred to me that you couldn't play with someone or not like them because of the color of their skin or because they looked different than you. And two, I was hurt. That was my dad, my protector, the safest person I knew. How could someone say that my dad wasn't safe? Her and I never spoke again after that day, and I, to this day, have actually never told my parents this story. I think I didn't tell them because at the time I didn't really understand what was going on or what it meant. And also because I didn't want to hurt my dad. I didn't want my dad to feel like he was the reason I wasn't having relationships with people, because that issue was 100% theirs, not ours. And I really hope that today they are able to reflect back on that or just look at themselves and understand that that opinion was wrong and it was hurtful. Flash forward to today. I am proudly in an interracial marriage, and Jimmy truly is my best friend, my partner, and he's my entire world. I'm so grateful to those that came before us to fight for the right for us to be together and for interracial marriage to be legal. Because without him, I truly am nothing. And I am honored to stand proud and speak loud for the rights of all human beings, no matter your color or your beliefs. And I'm able to do that because I get to stand next to him and be strong. This summer, we took our love and our unity to the streets of downtown Phoenix to march next to our brothers and sisters as we fought to stand against social injustices that are continuing to happen in our communities and all over the world. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what Martin Luther King Jr. and his work means to me, and I too have a dream. I have a dream that my future children, who will be Filipino, white, and Black, will not have someone say they can't play with them because they look different or their dad doesn't look like their dad. I have a dream that my children will be raised in a society where we will see justice and the rights of all human beings taken seriously. Just because the person to the right of me may not look like me does not mean they are not worthy or that they are not deserving. And just as the wonderful Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said, "No one is free until we were all free." May we continue to do our part to be on the right side of history and walk in the footsteps of those who led this work and will continue to lead this great work. Thank you.
My name is Angie Stratton, and I proudly represent Rio Salado College's Educator preparation program. Essentially, I teach teachers how to teach. When I reflect about Martin Luther King, I think of a Nobel Peace Prize winner who had an incredible impact on the civil rights movement. As an elementary school teacher, I understood the importance of sharing Dr. King's message of equality and his tireless efforts in advocating for social justice. Dr. King's lessons extend well beyond that of an elementary school classroom or even a high school classroom. In fact, they influence the work we do here today at Rio Salado College. The theme for this year's celebration is realizing the dream, which underscores the importance of just one person's actions in advocating for a world that values diversity, equity, inclusiveness, and belonging. In fact, Dr. King valued education. He said it inspired action. As teachers, we value reflection. Reflection is an important part of good teaching. So today, on this very special day, I can reflect on Dr. King's selfless actions and think about how my own actions, whether they're big or small, can affect a positive change in the lives of others and in the world around me.
Realizing Dr. King's dream means that now, more than ever, we must continue to fight for its realization. The vision has not been achieved. Progressive strides, absolutely, but the dream is not complete. It is undeniable that we as a nation have enacted rather substantial change in the last 50 years, but it is equally, and if not more true, to say that we have much work to go. This last year, we lost Representative John Lewis, a living testament to the fight for equality. It was the efforts of people like him and many more that fought and sacrificed so much to allow me just a chance to succeed in America and to grant my generation opportunities that they were never afforded. So while I'm proud of the progress, we must recognize that it's not nearly enough. Too often are we satisfied with the slow crawl of incremental change. But as Dr. King so famously said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So for me, realizing Dr. King's dream means standing atop the legacy of his work, to take up the torch and to continue the fight until the dream is no longer a dream, but a reality. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us today. It is with great honor to have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker for today, Congressman Greg Stanton. Mr. Stanton has been a staple of Arizona politics and a stalwart representing the greater Phoenix area for the better part of 2 decades. He currently serves as the distinguished representative of Arizona's 9th District to the United States House of Representatives, after honorably serving as the mayor of Phoenix from 2012 to 2018. We are immeasurably grateful to have him today, contributing to our celebration and the commemoration of the great Dr. Martin Luther King. Without further ado, Congressman Greg Stanton.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Craig, for that very kind introduction. Great to see you. It's my honor to be here today for this beautiful celebration with students and faculty and the community as a whole. Let me also say a heartfelt thanks to President Kate Smith and Dr. Floyd Harden and the incredible team with the college for all the hard work, for bringing people from all backgrounds together in unity today. This year has been anything but business as usual. And while Rio Salado has a long history of adapting and innovating so that everyone everywhere has access to quality education, I still want to take a moment to applaud the teachers, students, staff, everyone who've helped adjust to these difficult circumstances and make sure that people can move forward with higher education. As we reflect today on Dr. King's life and legacy, let me say that I'm amazed by the example he set for creating social change and how relevant that blueprint still is today after all of these years. Dr. King didn't have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any of the social media that we have today, but the fundamentals are still very much the same. Through his efforts, a nation learned how social impact can arise from anywhere, from anyone. This day is also an important reminder to take stock, not just to celebrate the progress we have made, but to steel ourselves for the work we still have to do. And there is much we still have to do. And his name was mentioned earlier, but let me also discuss the legend that we lost this year, someone that I had the great fortune for a year and a half to work alongside with in the House of Representatives, and that's the great Congressman John Lewis. Just a few years ago, he said, quote, "Our struggle is not a struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is a struggle of a lifetime," unquote. He knows that better than anyone, and may he rest in power. Now, We know this is not an ordinary year, and this is not an ordinary MLK celebration. The coronavirus pandemic has devastated our state and our country and continues to vastly disproportionately hurt our African American and Latinos community here in Arizona. And last summer, the tragic murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and way too many others brought about a national reckoning that continues, where we are once again faced with the difficult truth that equality has been denied to Black Americans since the very beginning of our nation's history. The structural racism that pervades this country must be met head on. And I won't pretend that eradicating racist feelings or racism as a whole and prejudice is within the specific purviews of the United States Congress. But there are many steps that Congress can take meaningfully to address longstanding institutional biases and systemic racism. You know where we can start? We can start by passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to ensure that communities of color are not singled out by oppressive voting laws. And we've seen way too much of voter suppression over the last few years. We can pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act to begin to rebuild trust that is eroded between police and communities they serve. And we can take steps to eradicate everyday indignities. Let's start by passing the Crown Act, a bill that I was proud to support through the House Judiciary Committee that I serve on, which bans discrimination in workplaces and schools against natural and protective hairstyles that has been used to discriminate, particularly against African American girls in school. And let's ensure that people of color have access to capital that has been so long denied, so they have a fair and full opportunity to start and grow businesses in our community. The list goes on, but action needs to be taken. We have a lot of work to do to confront the continuing pervasive legacy of racism in our country. But as we rebuild our economy, let's ensure that it's one that works for every family in every neighborhood. And like Rio Salado College, ensuring quality education for every student is not just an aspiration, but a right. That's how we begin to right these wrongs. But then, of course, tragically and sadly, the kind of racism and hatred that doesn't bother with subtlety is right before our very eyes. Just a week ago, while I and my congressional colleagues were defending the will of Arizona voters on the floor of the United States Congress, the nation watched in horror as a mob of domestic terrorists stormed the United States Capitol. And an image that will stick with me, with the people watching this virtual celebration, people across the country, this image will stick with us, that these rioters were carrying the Confederate flag, a symbol of hate that never once even entered the Capitol building during the Civil War. That racist Confederate flag was strewn across the United States Capitol just a week ago. This scene is even more egregious when we reflect on how peaceful protesters this past summer were met with militarized force and compare the response to what we saw against the white supremacists last week. Had those seditionists been carrying Black Lives Matter flags, all of us know exactly how different the response would have been, because we saw it play out just a few months ago. It is perhaps the starkest example we have of the two America justice systems, one for Black and brown citizens and one for white. And just this past week, vile, hate-spewing white supremacists crashed the virtual memorial service for former Phoenix councilman and civil rights leader in our community, Calvin Good. They hid behind screens, and they cowardly flung racial slurs towards Calvin's grieving family. It was unspeakably evil, and yet occurrences like this have become far too common in 2020 and now 2021 United States of America. These are painful reminders of our not so distant past and the insidious white supremacy that still lurks in the darkest corners of our country still today. This should sadden and shake all of us awake to how deep-rooted these demented ideas still are and how dangerous they can be if left unchecked. And it does remind us of how much work we still have ahead of us in mending our community and erasing hate together. We can only imagine what Dr. King would have to say about all of this. If his legacy teaches us anything, it's a plea to remember what is good and right and to fight for it, to see that long overdue calls for racial, economic, and social justice that he fought for all these years are realized. Because the only way to ensure that Dr. King, Councilman Calvin Good, Congressman John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Bruce Boynton, so many other civil rights giants rest in peace and power is to pick up where they left off. We must carry that torch. Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Well, we all believe that to be true, but we can't take it for granted. Real lasting change has never been quick or easy or without controversy. Real change requires determination, persistence, two qualities, of course, Dr. King had in spades. He had an unshakable faith in our country, in its people, and that we will rise above hate, tribalism, and petty division and come together to realize a shared dream. That is the conviction we must carry forward now in our hearts. And it is because of the leadership of people in our community, including those gathered virtually here today, that Arizona will continue to achieve progress toward realizing Dr. King's dream. And it's because of your commitment, I know, despite these challenges that we've described here today, I know we will overcome this period of strife, and I look forward to working with each of you in continuing that work together. And we reflect on the memory and the leadership and the legacy of Dr. King today, this weekend, Monday, and we have to do it every day. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this celebration. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words. And now let's go forth together. Thank you, Dr. Harden, and everyone else. I appreciate it very much.
And thank you, Congressman Stanton, for those inspiring words. Next, I would like to introduce you to Dortricia Adelis, who will be sharing with you our call to action.
Good afternoon, everyone. As I gather myself after those poignant words, like so many of us here today, I struggle day in and day out in these current times, in these times of difficulty, and actually in despair, to find the voice of hope. And it is in these difficult times that I say to us all that we have to remember that we cannot give over to this despair. We are the hope and the dreams and the visions of our ancestors. And we would be remiss in these dark times to simply give over to the despair, forgetting the sacrifices that our ancestors of all hues have made so that we could stand here at this time. And I would offer that you and I are uniquely prepared, even if we don't feel that we are, to meet the challenges of this historic time. And we must take comfort and be brave so that we can move forward the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King and others who have gone before us. We must remember that we are not alone and that we collectively are empowered and tasked with using our voices, our actions, our faith in order to embrace this critical responsibility. Understanding that every thought, task, and effort, whether it be large or small, is critically important and will continue to help us further the dream of Martin Luther King and others who've come before us. So with that being said, where do we go from here? What do we do? I think that there's three critical places, things for us to reflect on that afford us some guidance. The first is that we remember. Take time to reflect and look to our ancestors, to look to our past and our histories, collectively and as individuals, because these are the histories that will anchor us and provide us with a roadmap and a building block to the work that has to be done to help us ensure the future. And in that process, I really believe that it's important that we also celebrate, that we not give over to the disparity and the hate that others have let consume them. That we remember that our ancestors dealt with things that we can only begin to imagine, and yet somehow they found it within themselves, their human spirit. They found ways to articulate their humanity and to reject the oppression and violence heaped upon them. So we, as a community, must continue to find opportunities like this to celebrate. Rio has created resources for all of us as part of our community legacy that allows us to find community to tap into and opportunities to celebrate our collective wins as a community and as individuals. We know now that we're not alone in this, and that if we feel at any given day that it's too much, that we are part of a community that says that we can reach out to each other and help to lift each other up. Because there are days when the fight is hard. And it is that remembrance and celebration of the strong people that came before us, and knowing that we are uniquely prepared to take on the baton of hope to move it forward, that must continue to remind us and elevate us, even when we see Confederate flags flying in our capital. They don't win. We must believe in hope and celebrate. And thirdly, we must plan, because it is required of us. The plan does not have to be a loud plan. It doesn't have to be a plan that includes everyone. It is an individual, personal commitment that one must make with oneself to be better, to recognize the humanity in each of us, to say that I reject hate, but I won't forget. And I will use those tools that are given to me to plan and create a better future. And at Rio, we have already begun to create opportunities to that end. So with that being said, I just want to encourage you all to find your ways and also remember that you are not alone. Be blessed.
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character. I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope.
It is with this faith that we are able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, stand up for freedom together, knowing one day we will be free.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania.
Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill in Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We hope that the words that were spoken today edify our discourse and strengthen our resolve to stand for what is right. It was Dr. King who said, "History will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people." Let's not be silent. Let's carry on Dr. King's legacy through our words and our actions. That concludes today's celebration. On behalf of the Maricopa Community Colleges, Rio Salado College, and our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee, we thank you so much for joining us and for championing civil rights. Thank you.